Let's be honest, when you hear the Book of Numbers, your mind probably jumps to long, boring lists. But what if I told you it's not some dusty old ledger? What if it's actually a dramatic four-act story about a nation being forged in the middle of a brutal, unforgiving wilderness? It's a story of order, rebellion, consequence, and, believe it or not, hope. It all kicks off with this number. And this isn't just a random statistic. Nope. This is the official count of every man 20 years or older who was ready for battle. We're talking about a massive community, a whole new nation of well over 1 million people, once you add in the women and children. And they're all on the move. And that census count immediately throws up the central challenge of the entire book. I mean, how do you possibly organize, govern, and guide a population the size of a modern city through a desert? How do you build a society from scratch? So we're going to follow their journey through 4 distinct acts. First, we'll look at the attempt to create this perfectly ordered society. Then we'll dive into the complaints and grievances that started to tear it apart. After that, we'll see the absolutely devastating consequences of their choices. And finally, we'll see how a whole new generation was prepared to succeed where the first one had failed. Okay, so the first step in forging this nation, it wasn't about conquering anyone. It was all about structure. Before they could take a single step forward, they needed a blueprint, a really meticulous social and spiritual order for their entire community, handed down directly from God. And this blueprint, well, it was a masterpiece of logistics. The camp was organized with incredible precision. Right at the absolute dead center was the tent of meeting, God's dwelling place. And then, radiating out from it, the 12 tribes were arranged in 4 massive divisions, each with a lead tribe and a specific spot. Everybody knew exactly where they belonged. And it gets even more specialized. The entire tribe of Levi was set apart for one job, taking care of and transporting that sacred tabernacle. And each Levite clan had a super specific critical role, from handling the delicate curtains, to hauling the heavy structural posts, to carrying the most holy objects themselves. On paper, it was a perfect system where every single person had a vital purpose. But a perfect blueprint is one thing. The messy, complicated reality of human nature, that's another thing entirely. And it really didn't take long for the ideal of this perfectly ordered society to slam right into the reality of hunger, fear, and just plain old discontent. And it all starts with a complaint. Even though they're being miraculously fed with manna from heaven every single day, the people start romanticizing their past. They remember the food they had in slavery, but somehow forget the bitterness of slavery itself. They're tired of the divine catering and start craving what they used to have. But here's the other side of that coin. All this constant complaining was taking a huge toll on their leader. Even Moses, the man who literally speaks with God, gets pushed to his breaking point. He's just completely overwhelmed by the sheer weight of his people's unhappiness. So all this tension is building and building, and it all leads to the story's most critical moment. After years of wandering, they finally make it to the border of the Promised Land. To get ready, Moses sends 12 leaders, one from each tribe, to go scout out the land. Their report after 40 days is going to seal the entire nation's fate. And the spies come back with 2 completely different stories. 10 of them give a report that is just dripping with fear. They saw powerful people, fortified cities, and they felt tiny, insignificant, like grasshoppers. But 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, they saw the exact same land through a lens of faith. They saw a challenge, for sure, but one they were certain they could overcome. So the people had a choice. Which report do you believe? The one of fear or the one of faith? They chose fear. The community chose to believe the 10 spies, and that one single decision, that collective act of disbelief, just spirals into open rebellion, and it triggers a consequence that would define them for an entire generation. The whole camp just erupts. Their fear turns into rage against Moses, against Aaron, and ultimately against God. They don't just refuse to move forward, they actually say they wish they'd gone back to slavery in Egypt or just died in the desert. They completely reject the future they've been promised. And their actions have direct, severe consequences. Earlier, a craving for meat had led to a plague. But this rebellion at Kadesh Barnea, this is different. The punishment fits the crime perfectly. You don't want the promised land? Fine, you won't get it. They are sentenced to wander for 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days the spies explored the land, until that entire generation of rebels has died off in the very wilderness they wished for. But the story doesn't end there in failure. This is where the whole narrative pivots. The 40 years of wandering become more than just a punishment. They become a transition period, a time to prepare the next generation, the kids who watched their parents fail, for the future they were always meant to inherit. During this time, the society actually starts to mature and build its own legal framework. Take this case, for instance. 5 sisters come forward with a problem. Their dad died without any sons, which meant his name and his land would just disappear from the family. This very practical issue leads to a brand new, forward-thinking law about female inheritance that would shape their society for generations to come. And the standards for this new era, they applied to everyone, no exceptions, not even for the top leadership. For an act of disobedience he committed earlier in the journey, even Moses, their great leader, is told that he will not be the one to lead the people into the land. Accountability was absolute. So, faced with his own failure to enter the land, what's Moses' response? It's pretty remarkable. He doesn't complain. He doesn't argue about his fate. Instead, his immediate concern is for the future of the people. He asks God to appoint a successor so the nation won't be left wandering around like sheep without a shepherd after he's gone. And that successor is Joshua. Yep, one of the 2 faithful spies from 40 years earlier. Leadership is officially passed from the old, dying generation to the new, hopeful one. The stage is finally set for the future. They also created these really sophisticated legal structures, like the cities of refuge. This was a system that made a distinction between intentional murder and an accidental killing. It introduced concepts like due process, asylum, and intent. This was another huge step in laying the groundwork for a just and stable society, not just a wandering tribe. So we're left with this question. Is the Book of Numbers just a tragic record of one generation's massive failure? Or is it something more? Is it a hard-learned lesson, a cautionary tale that also serves as the foundational blueprint for the nation that would finally, after 40 long years, be ready to claim its future?